The smartest person in the room is often the one with the least money. Think about that for a second. The honor students, the straight-A graduates, the people who did everything right. Many of them are living paycheck to paycheck. And the people who dropped out, broke the rules, ignored the system. Some of them are worth millions. This isn't a coincidence. It's not luck. It's something much more uncomfortable than that. The skills that make you a great student have almost nothing to do with the skills that build wealth. In fact, in some ways, they work against you. Here's a number that should stop you cold. According to a Federal Reserve survey, nearly 40% of Americans cannot cover a $400 emergency without borrowing money or selling something. Not 40% of uneducated people. Not 40% of people who didn't try. 40% of Americans. Period. And college graduates are not immune. The average college graduate in the United States carries over $37,000 in student loan debt before they earn their first paycheck. They followed the advice. Study hard. Get good grades. Get a degree. And they arrive at adulthood already in a hole. Meanwhile, the cost of housing has risen so fast that in cities like New York, Los Angeles, and San Francisco, you would need to earn 6 figures just to afford a modest apartment without financial stress. The median household income? Around $74,000. People are working harder than ever. Longer hours, more qualifications, more productivity. And somehow, the finish line keeps moving. There's a quiet frustration building in millions of people who did everything they were told, who studied, graduated, got the job, and still feel like they're losing a game they don't fully understand. That frustration is not weakness. It's actually a signal that the rules of the game were never fully explained. Meet Jordan. Jordan is 31 years old, living in Columbus, Ohio. He graduated from a state university with a degree in business administration. He did well in school. He was disciplined. He was responsible. His first job paid $52,000 a year, which sounded good until the math started. After federal and state taxes, his take-home pay was about $3,400 a month. Rent on a decent one-bedroom apartment, $1,200. Car payment and insurance, $520. Student loan payment, $350. Groceries, utilities, phone, another $600. That left Jordan with roughly $730 a month for everything else. Eating out sometimes, clothes, medical co-pays, the occasional trip to see family. By the end of most months, he had saved maybe $150. Sometimes nothing. Jordan wasn't careless. He wasn't buying luxury items or going on extravagant vacations. He was just living a normal, modest life, and he was barely moving forward. Then, in the spring of his 3rd year at work, his car broke down. The repair bill, $1,100. Jordan didn't have it. He put it on a credit card at 22% interest. It took him 8 months to pay it off. During those 8 months, he paid an extra $180 in interest. He went backward. He wasn't irresponsible. He was trapped in a system he had never been taught to see. Jordan is not a rare case. Jordan is everywhere. Here's the first thing no one teaches you. Financial stress doesn't just feel bad. It makes you cognitively worse. In 2013, researchers at Princeton and Harvard published a study in the journal Science. Their finding was striking. When people are under financial pressure, worried about paying bills, stressed about money, their cognitive capacity drops significantly. The equivalent, according to the study, of losing about 13 IQ points. Think about what that means. The very stress of being broke makes it harder to make good decisions about money. It's a feedback loop. You're stressed about finances, so your brain works less effectively. so you make slightly worse decisions. So your finances get worse, so you get more stressed. Researchers call this the scarcity mindset. When your brain is focused on immediate survival, on covering this month's rent, on paying this bill, on getting through this week, it has fewer mental resources left over for long-term planning. You can't think clearly about 5 years from now when you're panicking about tomorrow. And this isn't a character flaw. It's neuroscience. Jordan, sitting at his desk, calculating whether he can afford groceries this week, is not in a mental state that allows him to think strategically about wealth. He's in survival mode. And here's the cruel irony. The people who most need to make smart financial decisions are often the ones in the least mental condition to make them. Because the stress of scarcity has consumed the cognitive bandwidth they would need. This is the first hidden rule. Poverty isn't just a financial condition. It's a cognitive trap. Now let's talk about the second force working against people like Jordan. It has a name: lifestyle inflation. Here's how it works. Jordan gets a raise at work. His salary jumps from $52,000 to $61,000. For a moment, he feels relief. He moves into a slightly nicer apartment. $1,500 a month instead of $1,200. He upgrades his car when the lease ends. He starts eating out a little more often. He buys better clothes because he's presenting himself professionally. Each of these decisions, in isolation, feels completely reasonable. But here's what happens. His expenses expand almost exactly in proportion to his new income. His savings rate barely changes. He earns more. He spends more. He saves the same. Economists call this the hedonic treadmill. As income rises, expectations and spending rise with it. And the result is that people can move through their entire careers, earning progressively more money, and never actually building wealth. There's a famous statistic about professional athletes. According to Sports Illustrated, roughly 78% of NFL players face serious financial stress or bankruptcy within 2 years of retiring. These are people who earned millions of dollars. They weren't stupid. They weren't lazy. But they had never learned how to convert income into assets. And so the money came in and flowed right back out. The same principle applies to everyday earners. It's not about how much you make. It's about understanding the difference between money that passes through you and money that stays and multiplies. That distinction is the second hidden rule, and it's almost never taught. Now we need to talk about how money actually works. Not how we're taught it works, how it actually works. Most people think of wealth as a result of income. You earn more, you become wealthier. But that's not how the wealthy actually build wealth. They build it through assets. An asset is something that generates money while you sleep. Stocks, real estate, a business, royalties. Income is the money you trade your time for. Assets are the money that time generates on its own. Here's a simple example. Two people both earn $60,000 a year. Person A puts $500 a month into an index fund starting at age 25. Person B spends that same $500 reasonably on lifestyle expenses. By age 65, assuming average market returns, Person A has approximately $1.7 million. Person B has nothing. Same income, completely different outcome. The difference isn't effort. The difference is understanding that money can be turned into a system that generates more money. This is compounding. Einstein reportedly called it the eighth wonder of the world. Whether he said it or not, the math is real. Small amounts of capital invested early and allowed to grow become enormous over time. But here's what makes this difficult for most people. To invest, you need surplus capital. To have surplus capital, you need to earn more than you spend. To earn more than you spend, you need breathing room. And breathing room, financial slack, is exactly what the system makes scarce for people in the bottom half of the income distribution. Consider this. The top 10% of American households own about 89% of all stock market wealth. Not because they work harder, not because they're smarter, but because they had enough capital to begin participating in the asset-building game. The game isn't rigged in some conspiratorial sense. It's just that the rules heavily favor those who are already inside. And the school system never explains any of this. It teaches you to be productive, not to be an owner. Let's go deeper. Because understanding assets and compounding is important. But it still misses something. Something harder to talk about. Here's a story. Two people graduate college the same year. Both smart, both hardworking. Both with business degrees. The first person comes from a family with resources. When she wants to start a business, her parents co-sign a loan. When the business struggles in its first year, she has a safety net. She can take risks that a person without support simply cannot. The second person has no such cushion. He can't afford to fail, so he doesn't try. He takes the safe job. The job with benefits and a salary and stability. The good employee trap. And here's the bitter truth at the center of this story. Risk is the engine of wealth creation. Starting a business is risky. Investing is risky. Buying property is risky. But taking those risks requires something that doesn't get discussed enough. A safety net. A fallback. The ability to fail and survive. And that safety net is largely inherited. According to research by economist Raj Chetty, a child born into the bottom income quintile in America has only about an 8% chance of making it to the top quintile. Not because of intelligence, not because of work ethic, but because of starting position. The game of wealth is not a pure meritocracy. It never has been. And the most intelligent, disciplined, hard-working people, if they're born without capital, without networks, without safety nets, are playing a fundamentally different game than those who are not. The school system teaches everyone the same test, but it gives very different students very different starting lines. So what do we do with all of this? Jordan is still in Columbus. He's 31, earning a reasonable salary, trying to get ahead. He's not broken, he's not failing. But he's running a race on a track he didn't design, with rules he was never fully taught, against competitors who started 200 meters ahead. And the cruelest part of this story? Jordan blames himself, because that's what we're taught to do. If you're not building wealth, you're not trying hard enough. If you're not getting ahead, you made bad choices. The system is very good at making systemic problems feel like personal failures. But here's what's true. Intelligence and discipline are necessary. They are just not sufficient. Understanding how money actually flows, how assets work, how compounding works, how risk requires safety nets. That knowledge changes the game. Not because it hands anyone anything, but because you cannot win a game you don't understand. The people who build generational wealth are not always the most talented. They're not always the most hardworking. They are the ones who learned to see the system clearly, and then they learned to use it. That's not cynicism. That's the rule they never wrote on the board. The question isn't whether you're smart enough. The question is whether you understand the game you're actually playing. Because the moment you see it clearly, the whole thing changes.